And good morning.
Good morning, good sir.
Oh, yes. I don't think today we'll have the excitement that last week had, but it's going to be good. It's going to be real good. So,
Ah, well,
so did,
it'll be
did you get
it'll
out
be a good
and
day.
spend time in the snow?
Uh, yeah, I actually watched it from my living room when I was sitting in the chair. So no, I did not go out and enjoy it, but I did go outside and take a look. So
Well, my
I knew it
bride and I
wasn't as
went
good.
out to lunch with a couple after church, and it started snowing. And we decided we were going to do a drive about. So we headed south and then curved back around and came back, ended in Commerce, and sat and had some ice cream watching it snow, and then
Good.
made it back, closed the circle. About the time it had started tapering off, but
So our
uh,
good buddy and missionary, Craig Alsop. I don't know if you saw his post, but he loaded up his whole family and they drove west a little bit. Of course, I think he's in the Dallas area anyway.
Mhm.
So they drove until they found a lot of snow and played in it. So that looked like it was a pretty fun outing for them.
yeah, it was definitely heavier out west, and their starting point was Fort Worth, so
Hmm.
I didn't have to go too far for west. Good morning, buddy. It's good to see you. We've got some good reports. Buddy's bride is home, and Bobby is, better day by day. So taking it day by day. So we're getting some good reports and thankful. A lot of folks out there with illnesses, and uh, that the thing called the virus is still out there. So
Yeah.
I do have to say I don't know everything, but I like to know I know some things. It sure seems like the vaccination rollout is not going as quickly as it should and could.
Or as smooth. You're right. So
Yeah,
some
I,
states
I mean,
they've had a year to prepare, pretty much.
right,
So 9 months
right.
or so.
It
Yeah.
see, I don't know. I'm just a simpleton, but I think there are ways you could expedite making shoulders available to needles. I think there is,
Hmm.
and there's our Georgia. Good morning to you, Georgia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so anyway, I don't know. I just kind of like to see more people not not getting the virus.
Well, because of logistics reasons or planning reasons or whatever the case
Right.
is. So now I will say that some of it is there's some undue, probably some unmerited restrictions that's placed on those who are having to administer those. I know that
Right.
there were some certain guidelines here in our own hospital that I've heard about that I don't know if they worked through it or not yet, but you know they couldn't distribute to locations. It had to be in a centralized location, et cetera, et
Mm.
cetera. So it just kind of makes it a little more difficult for people to get to a single
Right.
spot instead of multiple spots.
Well, I was reading, up in New York, they actually had doses go bad. They kept hold of them so long they actually had to dispose of them. And I thought that's nearly liable in my mind because
Yeah.
um, you know all you got to do is say this is where we are, get in your car and line up, and we see that people do that. And um, I was thinking even here, I know our hospital was the central location, at least at the origin. I don't know if it still is, but open up that little carport there and line them up, and you
Kind of
roll
like
through there. And
a double Chick-fil-A line. Just
yeah, I mean, if
yeah,
Chick-fil-A
keep 'em
can do
working.
it, gee. And you just, you put a call out for any nurse, if you're retired, come on up here and help us out. You know,
I'm sure I could stick an arm.
I could stick it. Now, whether it would be enjoyable or effective is the question.
Right. So I was
Mm.
happy that the Bills won last night, even though I'm not necessarily a Buffalo Bills fan, but
Hmm.
they've uh they've had some heartache, haven't they?
Well, the difference between them and the Cowboys is they've had the equal distance of time between championship opportunities. They just never got any of theirs.
Yeah, that's right.
So
0 for 4
yeah.
in the Super Bowl. So anyway, that's a good game.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, well, Josh is out today. He's with family and friends, so we miss him, but we're glad he's got time to be away and rest, recuperate, reconnect. So that's awesome. Trying to think, not a lot going on around campus. I've heard of other churches kind of taking the same position we have as far as in-person ministries.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we might be in the post-holidays peak. So hopefully, this will move through, and then both time, weather, vaccines will begin to catch up, and maybe we can reach an equilibrium on this thing sooner than later.
Just as soon as we can. I think it's good just to kind of do our part for the community and, not push it. I know we all want to be back together, but
right,
do it safely and methodically, and we're flexible. So just as soon as we can do it and feel safe about it, we'll open it back up. So
yeah, I look forward to somewhere down the road when we start seeing that tipping point, where folks feel more confident in being, in places with people, and begin to see folks come back home. That'll be a wonderful time.
Yeah. So I'm excited to let you guys know that. My brother Jim and Debbie are usually on. I think they're on this morning, maybe on my watch party, but he's going to come out. He has an appointment at MD Anderson, I think the 3rd or so of February. So he's going to fly out on the 1st or so and spend some time with us. I'll take him down to MD Anderson. Lynn and I will. And so we'll get to see him for a week or so. So I'm looking forward to that. So,
oh yeah.
So he'll come out, and so that's good. So just be in prayer for that. Good, safe trip. He feels healthy enough to make the trip and, have enough energy to go bowling or something. We'll see.
Right.
Just kidding on the bowling part, but
oh, well, you never know. He may want to go bowling.
Yeah, who knows? He might. Yeah.
You don't know. So, oh my goodness.
I saw where Shenanigans is running a Martin Luther Day special. If you didn't see that, Shenanigans is running a special tomorrow. So if you do want to go bowling, hit them up.
Yeah. Or axe throwing.
Yes.
I haven't done that yet. I don't know. I'm oddly curious, but I also remember the number of times as a child and young man I threw axes that didn't go so well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they could create a space safe enough, So I don't know. We'll just see. So I've enjoyed watching the creativity of folks during this digital church time, and how people are utilizing it and advertising it and those sort of things. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I see Miss Debbie over here. So there she is.
There she is.
Our Floridian contingent.
Yeah, it works.
Contingent. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that works.
We got that Florida Georgia line going on.
That's right. We got the Southeast covered, and we could have some folks out west. I know truck driver Jimmy, I think, is in Fort Worth today, so he's back in state, and so that's good. It's still west, so oh my goodness.
So anything going on at campus that just kind of normal days?
Well, we had some damage to the blessings box, and I'm wanting to believe it was accidental, perhaps weather related. But I did see some damage to another one in town that was similar. So we have one door off trying to get it repaired.
I think it was the wind. We had a lot of wind.
I'm hoping that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't imagine someone wanting to be, so
We're gonna say it's the
We're
Winds.
excited. Yeah, we're gonna hope for the best. So, but with that being said, the blessings box is quite thin. So, if you have time and you should think of it, a gift would be deeply appreciated. I believe the blessings box is visited every day. I see folks pretty much every day stopping by, so it's meeting needs, and glad to have it. And um, it, I don't think it knew it was as tough a location as, I think of these rovers going to
Mhm.
Mars. We just had a rover quit up there. It was supposed to dig uh, 30 feet, supposed to drill down 30 feet into the Mars surface, and it got less than a foot, and things haven't gone so well. But the harsh conditions. Well, that blessings box is under harsh conditions
Yeah,
sometimes. So
that's
uh,
all right. It's good to have something there for them.
yeah,
So
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we'll get it put back together, and Lord willing, we'll get it put back on, and it'll all be all right. We'll
so
figure
the
out
one
something.
door is working, right? One door is
Yeah,
closed.
one is
Okay.
intact and working, but well, here's Jimmy. He's passing us up for a shower. So I mean, we've been passed up for lesser things, right?
That's
So,
true.
and we would accept you stinking, Jimmy. It'd be okay. You know, you could sit next to me. But other than that, we have our classic conversations homeschool group on Thursdays. We still have our senior adult um, exercise group that's here every morning at 8. And so there's activity on campus throughout the week. And but yeah, other than that, things are still pretty limited as far as other activities. So
Yeah.
we'll see what the spring holds for us. So
Sounds good.
oh, well, I tell you what, I will back out and let you push the boat into the water, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
All right.
Come back on whenever you want because we'll probably banter about again. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So we are in Revelations chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. We are going to look at the church of Sardis this morning. The church of Sardis is their commendation, if you will. The things that were said good about him was said that there was a remnant of the church that kept the faith. However, on the condemnation side, it says they were spiritually dead. So we're going to talk about the Walking Dead church this morning. So Sardis is the Walking Dead church. So let's look at Revelations chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. It says, "To the angel of the church in Sardis write, he who has 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars says this: I know your deeds, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain, which were about to die, for I have not found your deeds completed in the sight of my God. So remember what you have received and heard, and keep it and repent. Therefore, if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what hour I will come to you. But if you," in verse 4, "but you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their garments, and they will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. He who overcomes will thus be clothed in white garments, and I will not erase his name from the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches." So, the city of Sardis, uh, it had a fabled past, really, of wealth and splendor, and they kind of set up on a hill or a mountaintop, if you will. They were um, somewhat protected from their enemies. They thought at one point that they were impenetrable, but we see throughout history that it was taken over time, probably because the lack of watchfulness, or the sort of the lack of growth from the people who watched the city. But anyway, it was a city of wealth and of greatness, and but most of the greatness laid in the past. So Sardis was devoted to the mother goddess of, I pronounce it Sybil. I don't know. It's Cybele. Her worship was of one of a lot of sexual immorality, orgies, debasing character, kind of darkest, impurities were committed on her, behalf, if you will. So that's kind of what most of the people gravitated towards, was the worship of this goddess. But in Revelations 3:1, it says, "I know your deeds, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead." So at a Sardis type church, you're going to have someone that's still going to uh, prepare the lessons and teach the lessons. Take care of the flower beds out front, fix what's broken, get Sunday morning services prepared, fix the coffee, all that kind of stuff. Someone's going to preach a sermon. All these things are going to take place, but yet what's being said about them is they're dead. They're not spiritually alive. So the church at Sardis is dead. So we'll get into why, maybe some of that, some of the characteristics, but um, if the Sardis church is dead, remember the church is made up of members, so that means there's members in the church that aren't spiritually alive, that are dead as well. So in reality, these kind of members, maybe they don't get really excited about the things of Christ. They get excited more about maybe the programs, more about the opportunity to see one another, but it's really tough for them to get excited about the things of God. So they're in this like spiritual dead zone. Have you ever been in a dead zone with your cell phone? It's a little frustrating, right? Where you can't get any service. Well, they're in a spiritual dead zone. Nothing is happening in their lives from a spiritual perspective. Nothing gets them spiritually excited. Nothing gets them motivated to share the gospel. And overall, there's really no interest in serving others, until it hurts. So even though the church was filled with a lot of external activities, a lot of work that's going on in the church, they are known for being asleep. They are known for being dead in their spiritualness. And as Paul talks about in Second Timothy, they had this form of godliness that was maybe more outward than inward. And because of their failure to walk with the Lord, and denying the power of God through maybe just trying to do things on their own, they were out of touch with what true spirituality looks like. So some may have been simply just professing Christians, going through the religious activities, but they never really trusted in Christ. But I think most people, more than likely, they were just believers that had not that started well, but just aren't finishing well. They had failed to grow. They had failed to move past their sort of initial contact with Christ. Failed to experience true spirituality. They were active in the church. They were engaged in the church, but they had become spiritually stagnant, or maybe out of fellowship with Christ. So, Jimmy, you can come back on if you want. And as we go through these verses, happy to have your input. But what do you think about a church that seems to be doing everything right? It's got some good programs. They got a good reputation in the community. Members are busy. Kind of people coming and going. There's a lot of activity at the church, but yet they're characterized as being dead. What would
Right.
that? I know for sure you would not want that said about Authentic Life Fellowship.
No, that is definitely not what you want to, advertise on your Facebook page. Those types of churches really struggle with a couple of things. One could be spiritual immaturity. You had mentioned that earlier. And that's simply where young and old, irregardless of where you are on the discipleship spectrum, you're not advancing, you're not growing, you're not moving beyond where you are. That is a detrimental attitude. But there's also a challenge when people come into the church, and especially those who claim to be Christians, and they start following the leaders. They do what other people do, but they themselves truly have not yet experienced salvation and transformation. And so they do all of the activities, but there's no activity in those activities. Those can be very detrimental because we can become self-righteous. We this type of church or this type of individual, because I think it's really important that we remind ourselves that you and I, as the individuals, we are the thermostat that determines the temperature of the building. You know, a church building, a church group is the sum total of all of its members. And so a church is going to be as its members are. But a church like that can find themselves measuring their success by less than biblical standards. You know, that's the type of church that goes, well, you know, look at that church. You know, they do morning worship at 10 o'clock when we know that God's hour is 11 o'clock. And those sort of things. They don't play well with others. They will probably have a history of leadership turnover because that type of group doesn't take to leadership very well, and a good leader has, you know, won't tend to stay with them very long. So it is a dangerous place.
Yeah, they want to keep things kind of the way it is. Now, I did read it was part of a, you know, devotional, and it didn't tell me what the church was, but the person writing it was saying, was telling a story about a church where they were growing. They had just bought property, sort of a, you know, corner of, you know, Main Street, where there's a lot of activity going on, and they were growing. And then, but on the flip side, you know, so we're talking about, you know, folks that maybe never really have their spiritual connection on the inside. It's really all on the outside. But there are folks also that a church can become dead because they don't want to change, because they don't want to grow. So this particular pastor was saying that they had to pack their bags and leave because the original, you know, the OGs, the original members of the church were saying, hey, we're kind of being pushed out of our comfort zone. We have all these people coming in here wanting to change stuff, and we don't want to change. So, you know, the pastor had to actually move on because the church was dead, kind of in a moment in time, right? They didn't want to do anything else. So that's kind of interesting too. So verse 1 says, oh, go ahead.
Anything that is not growing, which means there's change, anything that's not growing is dying or dead. Right. And one of the great challenges inside the church is to own the church, in that we have responsibility and privilege. You know, there is certain things that being a part of a church family affords us, but the ownership has to be held onto snugly, but not tightly. You know, as pastor at ALF now for a few Sundays, you know, ALF doesn't belong to me. It's not mine. And it's funny because every now and then, you know, someone will go, well, your church. And I know what they mean, but it makes me squirm a little because ALF is not my church. I am the privileged under shepherd for a season, you know, however long the Lord chooses, but it's not my church, because if the Lord tarries his return, there'll be a next pastor, you know, in, you know, 20, 25 years from now, but there will be. And so that's the challenge for all of us, because like Jeff, you and your family were here really close to, if not at the genesis of the fellowship. And so for you guys, it would be a natural and almost an easy thing to do, to go, well, you know, we started this church and we want to do it this way and things. But I think if anyone, you would agree that ALF has evolved.
Absolutely. And amen to that.
And sometimes, you know, hey, sometimes you try an experiment and it doesn't work, and you know, kind of eject that thing. But sometimes you try experiments and they work, and they move you forward. And that's one of the things that I've always valued about my time here with the family is there really is a spirit of, well, we can try it, you know, and I value that a great deal. And I think that's one of the real maturity marks, for our fellowship, at this time.
Amen. Well, let's look at verse 1. So, verse 1 says, I know your deeds, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. So, as with all churches, with these 7 churches in the letters, the Lord declares, I know your deeds. And so, what I want to point out here and just remind us, things that are invisible to others is perfectly clear to God. So, God knows our deeds. God knows our hearts within the church as individuals. Um, so, it's very clear to the Lord, and He's in the business of revealing our true conditions to us. So if we'll just listen and tune ourselves into the Holy Spirit, we can kind of see where we are, not only as a church but as individuals. So that's sort of a side note. But in the next few, let's see, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain, which are about to die, for I have not found your deeds completed in the sight of my God. Verse 3. So remember that you have received and heard, and keep it and repent. Therefore, if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and in an hour you don't know. So here in the very next few words, there's kind of a reality check that's going to take place. So we see in this letter that this church had a name and they had a reputation. They were doing some things. So there was a perception on what the community thought of them and what their members thought of the church. We also see that they were alive. That is, they were an active church. They were full of programs, really good programs. They had a lot of activity going on. They had, a homeschool group on Thursdays. They had exercise classes on Mondays, right? You see, that I kind of asked you why we had activity at the church, because I wanted to use that. So you see how that works. So there was what the community and members saw going on each day. So it's kind of what they thought, and it's what they saw. But regardless, it said that they were dead. So, and then there's reality, what the Lord saw and knew. So even though the church had this reputation, they had a lot going on. There was a certain perception from the community and the members. The Lord is saying, let me see if I can find this verse again. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain. So, you started out well. You really haven't grown. There is a remnant of faithfulness that's going on, and you strengthen those things. If not, it's going to die away as well. So the point. Go ahead.
Well, what I see is there's actions without activity. I think of AI and robotics. When you watch it, it's doing actions, but there's no activity inside of it. When I say activity, there's no heart beating, there's no brain thinking, processing. And I believe the church we're looking at here is that the believers are about the activities, but there's no activity in their hearts. There's no passion, there's no growth, there's no sort of thing like that. And what can happen in those types of settings is, like you said, you may have a group here who are active inside, but if those two stay together long enough, it's kind of a slow fade, like the old song used to say. A church doesn't usually die overnight. Now, if you give the right circumstance, a church fellowship can be destroyed in quick order. But typically, what can happen is, if you're not careful, there's this slow degeneration. It's like it's like the Tin Man starting to rust out. And next thing you know, you find this once vibrant church who's basically stalled. There's nowhere left to go. They don't have the essential elements, and that no church ever goes, hey, one of these days I hope we can close our doors.
One day I hope that I'm going to be irrelevant in my community, right? So the point here is they had this good reputation on the outside. From the outside looking in, everything going well. But the Lord knew and saw what was going on inside, because people were not growing. People are not being active on the inside, as you've been saying this morning. Although they had all these things going on, there was no spiritual growth that was taking place. So and we have to be careful that the world standard of success is
Hmm.
not equal to what God's standard of success is. So what does it mean to be dead? What does it mean to be spiritually dead? Jimmy, you said it very well. Maybe not be active on the outside, but not active on the inside. But in Scripture, death stands for the separation, the concept of separation, of God. For the unbeliever, death means without spiritual life, without God. It's separated from relationship with God. For the believer, death could be like a sleep, or a symbol for being out of fellowship with God. Even though I'm a believer, at times I can be out of fellowship with God. Right, I can be separated from the source of my strength if I'm not careful. I certainly want to be aware of what's going on in my life so I can tap back into that source. But um, so again, some could only be professing believers in this church, but um, I think the emphasis here, though, is on true believers who are working from their own strength, from their own resources, from their own intellect, from their own personality, from their own charisma, things like that. Not growing, not tapping in to the Lord, and we have to be constantly energized by God. We have to constantly be in His Word, praying, associating with other believers who are helping hold us, accountable. So this is a warning, and a church is in danger of being spiritually dead, or being a walking dead church, when it begins to worship in its own past, or its own history, its own reputation, its own name, or the names of who is in their church.
Hmm.
So now, those who are listening, we are very blessed and very, I'm going to embarrass our pastor, honored, if you will, to have him as our pastor. He is a very well-known commodity in this community. So to have him, we are very blessed. I know he would say, "No, I'm very blessed," but we won't go into the long 10-minute, you telling us how blessed you are, because we know that you are. But so we begin this death spiral, if you will, if we keep looking in the past, when we're more concerned about uh, formality than the impact that we have in our community or on individuals, more concerned about how many numbers we have than with the spiritual quality of life that is being produced in people like you and I. When we're more involved with the business of the church, the management of the church, even though it has to take place, but when that takes precedent and priority over the ministry of the church, well, that's when a church starts becoming a little bit uh, sliding down this slope, into death.
Do you,
So
do you mean if you have more for a business meeting than you have in worship?
yeah,
Could that be an indicator of trouble?
that might be that
That
might
might
be.
be an indicator of trouble. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not only is there a pitfall of living in your past, I think there's also a pitfall of trying to live too far in your future. Um, I think sometimes, as a leader and as a church, we're called to walk slowly among the people, not to run too far out ahead of them. Now, the need is to try to look up the road some, and I'm so thankful for the leaders of our church over these years, because there were a lot of things, especially uh, early on, that we made decisions on based on what we thought the future might be like, and what those benefits and things would be, and that has saved our fellowship a large sum of money and effort. It's also couched us to be ready. When the virus came, we on many of the fronts were ready to be transitioned to a more digital footing, and so it is important to try, to remember the past. It's valuable, and to try to forecast or see ahead, and be prepared for that. But the challenge is living in the here and now, and like we're doing with our opening of campus, is we're just trying to do the best we can in the here and now, and you know, uh,
Yeah, we're looking, what, 6 weeks, 5, 6 weeks down the road,
right.
and if we get 2 weeks into it and something, continues to spiral or get better, we'll adjust. And you're absolutely right. It's like, let's not get too far ahead.
Right.
I mean, there is something to, you know, uh, sort of, I always use the analogy of like when you play soccer or you're on the basketball court, you want to pass the ball to where they're going to be in soccer. Of
Right.
course, you don't want to pass it to the player. You want it where they're going to be. So we certainly want to do that.
And let me just say this as a warning is I understand, this platform is wonderful, and a number of the folks with us this morning, physically couldn't be here, even if they weren't deterred by, weather or virus or those sort of things. But when the day comes back to us, and it'll be vitally important that you choose in-person worship over digital when possible, because there is a challenge with doing this so well and becoming so comfortable with it that we find ourselves separated. We are together, but we're not physically together, and there is an unreproducible value of being in the company of believers during worship, service, and study.
Amen. Absolutely. And when we get to that day, I'm sure we'll kind of hit that nail a little harder for sure. So,
Yeah,
because I'm telling you, after several months, it's pretty
yeah,
comfortable to kind of get
sure.
up and you got your coffee. I can just walk right back over and get some more coffee if I want some, or recline in the chair, a little bit more comfortable than the pew. So you
Sure.
can get lulled into this digital world that we live in, but I certainly do not want to trade it for what I experience for in-person worship.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't hear me say that that there's a lesser than,
mhm.
as being with us digitally, because I'm thankful for those that connect with us. It means the world to me. And so I'm not diminishing one over the other, but I hope that those who can be here in person uh, in the nearer future will choose that option. Um, and
And I guess we could probably go on a limb and say that I don't know if we get back to normal, but when it's okay to kind of people are comfortable to get back into corporate worship together, this platform doesn't go away.
right.
We're
Oh,
for right now, the foreseeable future. This is a additive to the ministry. So because we have, I would certainly would not expect our folks from Florida and Georgia and Tennessee and wherever they're tuning in from uh, to not have a place to come, because this is
right.
you're as much of our church as whoever I'm going to be sitting talking to here in a few minutes in the service. So
Right.
um,
That's
all
right.
right, we digress a little bit. Let me go through 4 through 6 so I can land this plane. But you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their garments. They will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. He who overcomes will thus be clothed in white garments. I will not erase his name from the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. So in verse 4, there's commendation for a few that have remained faithful. Thank you to those believers who remain faithful through whatever times, because the church goes through its hills and valleys as well. Uh, in verse 5, though, the overcomer is promised that he can never have his name erased from the book of life. So, could this suggest the possibility of the loss of salvation? So, such a concept is totally contrary to the doctrine of salvation and faith taught in the New Testament. So, it teaches us the security of the believer, that we are, once sealed by God, who can unseal. So, I want to touch on this a little bit because sometimes this can be a little confusing. What do you mean erase from the book of life? So Charles Stanley, I like Charles Stanley. He puts it this way. He says, "Does it make any sense to say that salvation is offered as a solution for our sin, and then to turn around and teach that salvation can be taken away because of our sin as well?" So sometimes we get a little confused about the doctrine of salvation, but let me put this in context. This why this is in this particular letter. Um, Practically every city at this day had a roll or register of its citizens, and Sometimes there would be great exploits that we be performed, and you'd have your name kind of written in gold, if you will. There would be special distinction. There was, honored, for that. But there also was that you could be removed from the city register, as well. So this statement would have been understood for the people at Sardis during this particular time, and it sort of implies that you know that if you continue to do well, if you continue to overcome, you're not going to be removed from this register. And sometimes there was evidence of a person's name being removed because of maybe they were convicted of a crime or something like that. So the Christians at this day would have understood this particular statement, saying, "Hey, overcome, perform well, so you're not removed from the register of the city rolls." It's not a loss of salvation. So as a true believer, it's not, if you continue in sin as a true believer, that you're going to lose your salvation. No, it's there may be disobedience, there may be an obedience action, but you're not sort of unsaved. So Pastor, maybe clean up where I may
Well,
gone
what
astray
I
on that.
think about is, as a believer, we have the opportunity to be counted among the faithful and to leave a lasting mark in our fellowship, in our community. And we all would agree that our attitudes and our actions have a significant bearing on whether we do leave a mark and what type of mark that is. It is my deepest desire that if the Lord tarries, that when I step off this mortal coil, that I will have left a mark that will last longer than me, so that when people think of me or they think of ALF, they'll think of, well, he was righteous, and he was faithful and these sort of things, that they'll go, well, that's what the Lord did in him. Because far too many believers are more like shooting stars. They get really bright for a short period of time and then they just flame out. And, and all that means. But if we wanted to keep that same thought there, my hope is to be a comet where there is a consistent, faithful pattern of behavior that people want to see, that enjoy to see, that might would like to emulate that, and we talk about it. We're going to talk a little bit about today is, if we're going to live and leave a legacy, we get to choose what it is. And not everybody in the church, the capital C church, leaves much of a legacy, if any. You and I can think of men and women who, they're like redwoods, as we look back and, you think, man, what would the church have been without, him and her? And I think my mother-in-law in particular, because I owe her, because she picked up stray animals and stray people.
Amen.
Picked this stray up, and that's, I can't tell you how often I think of my mother-in-law, just grace, and I think that's the type of tall tree I want to be. But if we go digress just a little bit, you can have a lot of tall trees, but you don't want to kill all the undergrowth, because no matter how tall your tree is, one day it's going to be failed.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In this particular statement, I'll sort of round out the message on this. It could be an encouragement to us as well, because it says, "He who overcomes will thus be clothed in white garments, and I will not erase his name from the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father." So we have to remember, when these messages were written, Christians were under a lot of pressure. They, especially in Sardis, they were being, it's kind of the same as today. They were being branded as social rebels. Mm-hmm. They were being stripped of their citizenship because of what they believed. So if they refused to kind of recant their faith, or refused to sort of condone or be part of the practices of the worship of this goddess, well, they would be socially ostracized. So So this is also a source of motivation for those who persevere. That there's always a place. There's always our place in our heavenly citizenship, if you will. So and salvation has nothing to do with us. It's not how good we are or how bad we are. And as a believer and sealed by the blood of Christ, I don't keep that because of how good I am, or I don't lose it because how bad I am. I keep it because of the love of God. So so persevere, finish well. And I can think of some of those trees in my past too that are still standing and still strong. But unfortunately, there are people who are strong at certain phases of my life where that tree has now been blown over for some reason.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, in Sardis, the Christians might have been called liberals.
Yeah,
because we have a certain pattern of behavior and expectation and belief, and if you're outside of that, one word we use is liberals. And so, yes, in the church in Sardis, they were seen as outsiders. They were seen as detrimental. And if you look, it was Christianity that, in large part, helped to bring Rome down.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, these men and women were up against it for certain, and much like ourselves, they had to choose every day what was the priority in their life, and we have to choose it today, because the same temptations are there, the same opportunities are there, if not more. And we must live on purpose, and we have to choose what that purpose is. And it's either to know God and make him known, or everything else. That's the two choices. And that's a day by day choice. And sometimes it's a moment by moment choice.
I agree. Well, brother, I have a choice that I got to get to the service. So,
yeah.
Well, if you don't mind closing it out, I will see you in just a few minutes. All right.
You enjoyed it. Thank you, Jeff. Well, thank you again for being with us this morning. I hope that you're planning to come back and join us for worship here in about 15 minutes on this same channel. You can get up, you can potty up, you can caffeine up, and be ready. We're going to continue our look at the topic of knowing God's will. And today we're going to look at not following the wrong formula. Knowing God's will takes a personal choice, but there's also a process to it. And if we use a faulty process, then we're going to come out with a faulty answer. So today, we're going to look at some of the very same challenges and faulty processes that the church we just discussed would wrestle with. You see, Ecclesiastes tells us there's nothing new under the sun. And so it's going to be a really enjoyable message. I hope that you'll plan to come back and join us here in 15 minutes. And I hope that if you're on our Facebook side of our broadcast, that you'll launch a watch party and invite your family and friends to join you at church. And I believe in the end, you'll both be thankful that you did. Thank you again for your time. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may you be well. And until we see each other again, please, let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I'll see you soon.